Hi everyone, and welcome to our first webinar of July. And my name is Sonia Siddiqui, working with online services, bringing you this awesome panel event by RBC. So we're very glad to kick off the month with an awesome webinar with RBC again. And joining us today will be Vivian, and I'm sure everyone's already met her before. Including Karan Mehta and Christopher Chinloy, and Amit will be joining us shortly as well. So I'm going to just hand it over to Vivian now and everyone else to introduce themselves to the RBC team.
Thanks, Sonia. Hi, everyone. If you haven't attended our previous sessions, my name is Vivian. I'm the Senior Manager in RBC's Inclusive Recruitment. By inclusive recruitment means we represent RBC. We go to different diverse communities of our candidate communities and try to help candidates who traditionally would face employment barriers, such as newcomers like yourselves, and again, meaningful employment in RBC. So a little bit about myself. I came to Canada July 2013, so this is July now. My landing day was July the 29th. I can forever remember that day. If you ask me about my Canadian experience, I would tell you it's 6 months of winter. So I'd be very proud to put that on my resume. But yeah, so it has been a great journey so far, but I was a newcomer myself. I understand the challenges that you all are going through coming to a new country, speaking a new language, and the different cultures and no professional network. So that's exactly why we're here today. We have a great panel, and they're all immigrant employees. So we would be very happy to share some of the insights and advice with you, and hopefully that will be helpful in your job searching journey. That's it, a little bit about me, and I'll pass it to Karen.
Hi everyone, my name is Karan Mehta, and very similar to Vivian, I actually moved in about the same time frame. So I moved to Canada in 2002 in the month of August. So it's coming up to 16 years, which is very exciting. And I moved from Bombay, India. I spent most of my childhood years growing up in Bombay, now called Mumbai. For me, it'll still be Bombay because that's what it was called when I was growing up there. It's hard for me to change the name. I've been here for about, as I said, 15 or 16 years, all of it in Toronto. I've gone through a couple of education degrees, mostly been working in large Canadian banks ever since I graduated, and we'll be happy to chat about that more as we go through the panel discussion today.
Thank you, Karen. And now that's move to Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris.
Sure. Thanks, Vivian. So I'm Christopher Chinloy. I migrated to Canada in 2009 from Jamaica. I joined RBC in 2011, the same year as Karen. I've been in banking for many, many years. I started my banking career in 1992. And so moving to Canada obviously had its challenges. We can talk more about that later on. As I've already noticed that some of your questions have been around what kind of skills do you need, and it was a challenge. It was difficult to move from another country, picking up your family and starting over essentially. But it's not. I think doing it at my age is validation that it's always a good move, and I cannot say that it has deterred my career in any way. I didn't have a career change. I followed along the path that I followed, and being with RBC has been great because it has only opened up new doors and new opportunities. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Very well said. Coming to a new country, like I said, can be a challenge, but it's also a great new opportunity for everybody to explore a new life and a new career, possibly. I just realized that today's panel are all men. And I want to make it clear that it does not mean at all that RBC only hires males. So, as a matter of fact, 62% of our employees are female, and over 40% of our executives are female as well. So I just want to make it clear, just in case you have some false assumption that just, it happened today, all our panelists are male. But I'm sure they can share a lot of diversity perspective from their own story. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our hiring practice. At RBC, one of our hiring guiding principles is we hire from the community to serve the community. One key fact is we actually serve our clients in over 200 languages. And guess who are those who provide those services to our client base? Those are our immigrants or second generation immigrants like yourself. And we hire from the community to serve the community. We have a large portion of our workforce that are immigrants and visible minorities. By visible minorities in Canada, we have a very unique definition that means that the people who are non-white by color and not non-Caucasian by race, and a lot of immigrants fall into the categories. So we do hire a lot of newcomers every year. And because of our huge, immigrant employee base, we have been putting more and more focus in developing our immigrant employees into senior leadership roles. Like I mentioned, we have over 40% of our leaders are female, but we also have around the same percentage are immigrant employees in management positions. We have a very unique employee resource group called Mosaic. Mosaic are, employee resource group founded by employees themselves. And a lot of them are immigrants. So we share some different culture activities. We share networking opportunities and also development initiatives within our Mosaic chapters. We also have our very fun RBC Diversity and Inclusion Festivals. Every year, the different business we host different diversity festivals in each location. And a lot of food for sure, but and also it's a great opportunity for us to share our employees from different culture, different ethnicity, and religious background to just share where they are coming from and make us all aware of the different cultures that RBC is embracing here. And another thing that I want to mention is in RBC we have our employee opinion survey. Everybody can provide their opinion, and we have a very high percentage, 95% of our employees are very proud to work for this great company. That is the extremely high survey number. I remember in the previous company I worked for, it was around 60%. So that's a very a key factor of why RBC is the #1 brand in Canada, and we're the #1 bank in Canada, one of the largest in North America. So I see Ahmed just joined us. So before we go on to the panel questions, maybe Ahmed, you can give us a brief introduction about yourself, what you do in RBC.
So hello everyone, apologies for joining in a bit late. I came to Canada 13 years ago in 2005. I joined RBC 2006, so I've been with the bank for about 11 plus years. My current role is Senior Director of Operation Process Strategy. So I have a team in 3 locations, and we work closely with the lines of business on strategy piece for operations. I have collectively about 20 plus years of experience in banking, Canada being the biggest piece in my work experience, and of that RBC is the biggest work experience company that I've had. Prior to this I was in India, It's been great working in RBC. This is my fourth role, and each role I have reinvented myself. And we'll get into it as we move along in this talk.
Okay, so I have an interesting question for you, Ahmed. Actually, why don't we, why don't you tell us a little bit about your cruise experience for the people who don't know, what is this RBC Cruise Winner and how did you get onto that cruise? Tell us a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Every year RBC selects about 800 employees from its 80,000 employees all over the world, and these are selected based on different metrics. So it's not just about individual performance, it's also about how good of a partner that you've been with other teams within RBC, what has been your community engagement, because RBC believes very strongly in giving back to the communities that we operate in. So there are about 8 or 9 different criterias which are used to evaluate and find employees who've done good in those specific roles. And then these employees are taken on a cruise, which is an all expense paid by the bank for the employee and one guest that they can bring. And it's a week-long cruise where not only do we get to meet different of my colleagues from all over the world, but also really get to spend time with our senior management team and get to know them and get to know about RBC, its direction for the coming years. So it's a very, very enriching experience, and I won it because I came as the #1 commercial account manager in Canada, and I had the privilege of coming three years in a row, and it was a very, very enjoyable experience for me.
Thank you, Ahmed. And I also noticed that you're the Leo Award winner. For those people who don't know, like Ahmed just said, the cruise winners are the people who are the top performers of the company, and the Leo Award winners are the top of the top, basically. So congratulations, Ahmed, and we're very privileged to have you today, and I hope to hear more advice and recommendation from you in the session today. So let's get things started. Let's start from when you first landed, right? What kind of challenges you were experiencing as a newcomer in Canada, and how did you overcome that and got your first job? Let's start with Chris, since you're on my left-hand side.
Yep, thanks, Vivian. So I actually have a really unique and fortunate experience that I actually did my university education in Canada before moving back to Jamaica. So I went to University of Western Ontario, graduated in 1992 and went back to Jamaica, where I spent the next 20 odd years in the banking sector with a number of different banks, ending up actually with one of the top 5 Canadian banks as a multinational, and then deciding at that point in time to migrate to Canada with my family. So at that point in time, it seemed as if it would have been an equal fit to stay with the FI that I was with. However, that wasn't the case. It was if everyone remembers, 2009 was the height of the Great Recession, we call it now. But it did teach me that you have to leverage the experience you have, and not the role and the responsibility. So you have to position yourself not in the fact that you left as a vice president, because it doesn't equally mean the same in Canada. So taking the experience and the responsibilities you had, and leveraging those and saying, hey, I've done these things, I'd like to continue to do these things, went a long way. And I think RBC understood that, and so in 2011, 2 years after arriving, I was able to get a role with RBC, and since then it has just progressed. It's been they're obviously, needless to say, one of the top employers in Canada, but also they're inclusive, they're engaging, they've progressed and looked for opportunities to progress my own career. And I think that all our panelists will agree with that. That RBC for certain, we don't stop by hiring you. We don't hire people for a job. We hire people for a career. And so therefore, when you come into that role, I just answered a question from a panelist, from an attendee that said, do I, dumb down my resume? Never dumb down your resume, but it's less about the title and more about your roles and your responsibilities that you've had before and how we can actually use those to bring value to the company, any company, whether it be RBC or anyone else. But understand that we're going to try and leverage that and continue to groom you to bring those strengths out and to progress your career. Because as we said, we want career bankers in RBC and people who are innovative and can take us to the next level, whatever that next level is.
Thank you, Chris. And just out of curiosity, when you got your first job in RBC, was it just you applied online, or did you do a lot of networking and got invited through one of the referrals?
That's a great question. Yes, so I did apply online for a number of roles. Some roles, obviously, that I felt that were within my skill sets. You get to understand that that's not always the case. Having some accreditation is going to be very critical. So I always tell everyone, never stop learning. If you have the opportunity to land and get some accreditation that's recognized within Canada, absolutely do that first and foremost, right? And get prepared for the job that you're applying for before you apply for that job. Don't try and apply for the job and say you're going to get that skill set and accreditation afterwards. Networking is definitely a must. You're going to find that you're not the first person from the Caribbean. You're not the first person from Asia, from Southeast Asia. You're not the first of anything in Canada. Leverage that. You're going to find network opportunities, and I did. I reached out and I found people who were from Jamaica. I found people who were from Jamaica within the RBC network and said, "Here, please help." And I encourage that. It is still a situation of what you know, but also who you know, and that helps to go a long way. People vouching for you is a good thing, and Royal Bankers are like that. We're very supportive of people within our community, and that community is not just the community we live in, but it's the community we're from. So the Caribbean, from Asia, Europe, wherever.
Thank you, Chris. Those are some very good tips for our newcomers who's looking to build a network in Canada. We'll park that. We'll come back to that topic a little bit later. And now I'm coming to Karen, and tell us a little bit about your experience when you first came to Canada, Karen, and what were some of your challenges, and how did you manage to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Vivian, and very much resonate with some of the things Chris mentioned. So my story is somewhat different. I came here when I was 18 years old, and my family decided, rightly so, I think for them, that they didn't want to take the leap and move to Canada. But because I had turned 18, I was able to move directly as an adult. So I moved to Canada as an 18-year-old with no family, no real network or friends. And I moved with not a lot of financial backing. The good thing though in all this is I was actually moving for school. So I was moving because I had gotten admitted into the University of Toronto into an engineering program, and that was my rationale and reason to move to Canada. It was a big, I would say, looking back, a big leap of faith because you're moving with not really a lot of plans or ideas of what you're going to do in the future, but it's one of those things where you think opportunity will help you, and the more you get out there at an earlier age, I found that it really helped me develop as a person and also find my own ground, figuring out some of the challenges and how to uncover them, with the family and friends thing, being in school really helped because you're sort of forced to meet new people within the classes that you're in. And that's really how I helped build my community and my sort of circle of network over here in Canada. There's also some extended family that you can reach out to, and in today's day and age with technology, it's very easy to stay in touch with family even though you're remote. The other piece I would say financially is knowing that I had moved with not a lot of financial backing from my parents at that age. I was very firm on my approach of always wanting to find my own way and sort of find my way financially myself without putting that extra burden on my family. So when my friends would go back for a summer vacation, I would decide to stay back in Canada and find some sort of experience. Whether that was, I remember early on I did some roles in a book warehouse, and all I was doing was sort of organizing books and arranging them, because we were sort of creating a catalog that we would send off to schools across the country. All those things teach you something, and I think gaining any Canadian experience when you first move to Canada is very, very invaluable. So entering the workforce is way more important than finding that perfect role. To what Chris was mentioning, there is no such thing arguably as a perfect role, and you almost have to learn the way things work here. They may not be the same from the country that you've come from, and just be very willing, curious, able, and willing to learn it, and just sort of figure out how you can make this work for yourself using all the resources that you have, of which ACCESS is a huge part of it. So that's sort of a little bit of my story of how it came and how it started off for me. A lot of work, through my undergraduate days, and tried to meet people and learn and sort of learn the culture of the country when I first came.
Thank you, Karen. And those are some great points. Everybody, when we first came to Canada, we faced some similar challenges, but it is different people have different attitude, and the positive attitude really make that a big difference. So I will pass it on to Amit. Amit, please tell us something about yourself. And when you first came to Canada, what were some of your biggest challenges, and how did you overcome those?
Thank you, Vivian. Excuse me. It's really humbling to see that both Chris, Karan, and I have had similar experiences when we landed in this country. And as I'm going to answer this question, I feel so fortunate that I'm today working in RBC. When I landed in Canada, I came from India. Couple of things that I learned. So it took me about 14 months to find my job in RBC, and that period of my life I call apply, no reply. I would apply for various jobs, and I had no clue as to why nobody is responding to my email. I thought I had a great resume, I had a great cover letter, I have all this work experience. But then I started understanding, okay, what are some of the things that I need to learn? The English words that I had learned in India are not the exact same words which are used in Canada. So I actually opened up a word file and I said, okay, in India we call this, what is it in Canada? The way I used to describe my job in India, or the skills or things that I had, I realized that it's worded differently when I'm on workopolis.com or on jobstoronto.com. So I started realizing, oh, I need to start making those changes in my resume, because if somebody's picking this up, they need to understand what exactly that I bring to the table. So that's why I had a lot of learning, because then as I started getting better, I started getting a response, and I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm getting a response to my application, but I'm still not making it to HR. So then I realized that the way you speak, the way you talk about what you bring to the table needs to be such that the other person can understand what skills or competencies you bring. So then I cleared that level, and I was like, okay, now I get a response and I get to the HR, but I'm still not getting the next level, which is the interview. And I think over there, what I really learned was I had all these things in my mind where I'm going to fall short of money. I only have so much runway, I better get a job. So I was really not doing a good case of telling the interviewer what all I bring, because I was always operating from a desperation in my mind that, okay, I have to get a job, like there's not too much money in the bank account, I'm doing a survival job. And then I realized that's not good for me, because what you really want to tell in an interview is how you will do that role, why you are the successful candidate, why you will be good to fit in that team or in that culture, and how whatever experience that you have from your previous country makes you a good candidate. So when you operate from fear or desperation, you don't do a good job of representing yourself. So through various interviews that I didn't get or calls that were not returned, this is what I learned about myself. So if there's a process for creating your resume and your cover letter, there is a process for preparing yourself to answer questions in an interview, and it took me about 14 months to really get better at it, and that's when I landed my first job in RBC.
Wow, thank you. And actually, you brought some very refreshing points, right? How do you compare, how the when you were in India, how some terminologies were used versus how some, terminologies are used in Canada? I think, as our immigrant candidates are trying to change their ways of speaking and talking and try to align with more the Canadian way, from recruitment perspective, we are meeting you the halfway. Recently, in our recruitment, we piloted an AI technology, and what AI allows us to do is instead of picking the exact experience, but AI allows us to go to search a similar experience. So even though you might be using the terminology in India, the machine will allow us to recognize this is exactly the experience and the skill we're looking for. So I just want to let everybody know that we're doing a lot on our end to really address some unnecessary biases of the human recruiters and then try to help all the immigrants with great skills and experience to obtain a job in Canada. So
fantastic to hear, Vivian.
Yeah.
I said that's fantastic to hear that. I had no idea that RBC is using AI technology even in interviewing. That's brilliant.
Yeah, we are. We're seeing some great results, and right now we are using AI for some high volume roles, and we do have the plan to expand it to more professional roles as well. So I think we can move on to the next question. We have touched a lot of the speaking points in our previous answer. So what are some of the tips that you have for the candidates if you haven't mentioned that in the previous question? This time I will start with Karen.
Sure. So I would say, things that I haven't mentioned so far, don't underestimate the power of the network. To Amit's point, there often tends to be a lot of apply, and then no reply sort of situations going on. While that's definitely a path to continue following. I would highly encourage, so in terms of some tips, reach out to the network, reach out to people people who can introduce you to somebody else, and really have your story very, very clear. You don't really have to, when you meet somebody new for the first time, what I found that really works well is if somebody can summarize their entire sort of life that they've had to date in a very short 2 to 3 sentences, where they're able to explain the story of really what drives them, what keeps them up at night, and what is it that really gets them going in the morning. And the jobs, the experiences, the titles, all of that is variable because it's different in different places. So I would encourage you not to focus on that too much. Just focus on what is it that you like doing, and have that clear story for yourself. So when you go to meet with people, whether it's an interviewer, it's it's somebody in your network that you're looking to meet, you have that consistent common story, and that story will really stick with people because they'll be able to take that and share that story with other people and say, hey, I met this really great person yesterday who has an amazing story and a journey of how they've ended up in Canada, and it looks like this. Where do we see them being a potential fit for us at RBC or another organization? So I'd say network, meet people. While you're looking for roles, I know in the beginning we had mentioned approximately 65% of you on the line are seeking employment. While you're doing that, continue getting engaged in the community. Get involved in social groups, get involved in volunteerism. That's a great way to meet people. And also chat about your experiences and your stories, and the more you meet people, the more chances you have to find that next break through the networks that you build through your interactions. The last piece I would say is technology. So to Vivian's point, keep your I know in some countries some platforms may not be used as much, but LinkedIn is a great resource. I know we use it pretty extensively here in Canada. For yourself, it's a great way for you to keep your personal brand relevant and up to date, and also use that as a way to have your story there. So if somebody looks you up, they're able to get a very quick and easy reference point of sort of your background, who you are. Picture speaks 1,000 words, and yeah, I would say those are sort of my tips I would highlight on the call.
Thank you, Karen. And actually, we did a webinar a week ago about LinkedIn. So if you want to check out some advice in building your LinkedIn profile, please do check out our webinar from last week. And I pointed that I definitely would echo is when you are looking for a job as a newcomer, sometimes we do make compromises, but do pursue something you're passionate about, because if you're pursuing something you really are passionate about, you can make a real connection with the potential employer, and that's how you are going to soar in your career as well. So a lot of people ask, can I just apply for entry-level jobs, a teller? But if you have other career interests or higher career interests, I would definitely encourage you to pursue what you are really passionate about. And we talk about bringing your true self to work all the time, and that is actually a fundamental element of bringing your true self, bringing your passion to work. So Chris, how about you? Is there any tips additional tips you want to share with our job candidates?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, coming to Canada was difficult, and so for the first 9 months, I went through the same as Amit, which was the apply, no reply. I broadened my network, went as many job fairs as I could. Started looking outside of my comfort zone. I think at one point I even applied for a police officer role with Mississauga Peel Region Police.
How did that go?
It went well. I was narrowed down to the last 6 candidates. Glad I didn't take it, but
You didn't accept. Okay.
but I within 9 months I have an entrepreneurial background. I part of my work experience in Jamaica was starting my own business, and I ran a successful business for 6 years. So I leveraged that, and I took on a franchise within the first 6 months of getting here. That even after I got a role back in the field that I was proficient in, banking, I took a role with CIBC, which as a management trainee started out in the teller's role. And I think that's the point I want to try and get across, is coming from a vice president role with a multinational financial institution. Be humble enough, because I think when that was on my resume at for RBC, the vice president who looked at my resume said, I can see you have humility to be able to look at roles and expand your where you're uncomfortable. So being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think by doing that, it goes a long way to show people that you're willing to work hard. And that's what I did. And so taking on that teller's role and not thinking it was below me helped. And so within 9 months of being at CIBC and within that teller's role for 6 months, and then into a financial advisor role, went a long way in my application to RBC. And RBC took that into consideration, and I got hired for the role. And it's been a great progression since then. I would say that the integration piece, and I think Karen touched on this, is always be in a presence of learning. So always take every single role that you take and every single experience within that role as a learning experience, and use it to leverage it in some other way. RBC is great for that. We're a very innovative bank, and we try and use tools constantly changing. And so by being ahead of that curve, you'll make yourself valuable in looking for different roles. We have a executive vice president whose words I've lived by from within the first 6 months of starting with RBC. We went to a orientation session with him, and he said I've been with the bank for 35 years, and I've had 12 different careers. That speaks tomes. That's the reason why. Some of us say we bleed blue because we've got RBC in our blood, and it's because you really think that you can do anything you want here, right? There are roles within HR, there are roles within marketing, there are roles within wealth management, finance. All of these roles are different career paths, and you could really do a multitude of different career paths within this one organization. Um, it's up to you to take advantage of that. It's up to you to learn and develop your career, and this is why our attitude of working on your development plan annually and setting your goals, stretch goals. That's what's going to make you successful at RBC, and getting in and making a difference in your community, in the community that you work in, is important, because people value you, and not just the job you do.
Very well said. Very well said. So one point I would definitely echo is, we need to be, as newcomers, as immigrants, we need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Especially a lot of newcomers have language barriers. So on one hand, when we just come to Canada, we want to stay with our own community, because that's where we can conquer our fears and where we get a lot of community love. But on the other hand, I would definitely encourage everyone to step out of your community and go to meet new people and practice your English, learn about the multiculturalism in Canada. That's definitely going to help you not only find a job sooner, but also to build a successful career. You need to be open-minded and be able to step out of your comfort zone. So Ahmed, because we have discussed so many great points, which leaves you only 3 minutes before we open up to the Q&A session. So tell us about some additional tips you have.
All right. So I've got tips in 4 specific sections. So I'll go them in that order, and this is the order in which I really learned in my first few years in Canada. So the first tip is on resume. So ensure that your resume is 1 page. Ensure that when you are applying for a specific job, you really read the job description for what you're applying, and so that you can really highlight those features in your resume, which are the skills and the competencies that are applicable for that specific job. Don't have a generic resume that you just use to apply everywhere, because each job requires specific skills, specific competencies. And if you have in your past experience in your own country done that kind of role, or you have displayed those skills or those competencies, they really need to come out in your resume. Second thing is about cover letter. Now there's this whole online debate that you would see whether a cover letter is necessary or not. I always went with the fact that, okay, I need to have a cover letter, but the cover letter should not be just an extension of my resume. It should be a quick summary. So there's 3 parts to a cover letter. The first part is the job that you're applying for. The second part is the body, which is where you can talk about things that you've not covered in your resume, which are important for that specific role that you want that HR manager or that hiring manager to just become aware of. So if it's like 16 years of work experience in these 3 industries, whatever that is, let it come out in that cover letter. And then the third part is thanking them for their time and attention to it. So learn how to write a good cover letter. Go with the assumption that you are going to have a cover letter for every job that you apply. Then the third piece is with respect to interview questions. Prepare a lot for the interview questions. Come up with mock questions that an interviewer could ask. One skill that I really learned the very hard way is typically the first question always is about, tell me about yourself, because you've come from a new country, you have had similar work experience, so the interviewer wants to know who you are. I came up with my own formula for how to answer this. So I said, okay, my answer should not be more than 90 seconds. My first 30 seconds are going to about my work experience that is relevant for this role. My next 30 seconds are going to be about my education or accomplishments or things that I've done within that specific industry that are important. And my last 30 seconds are about my hobbies, interests, community engagement, which will display that I'm a team player, that I have diversity, things like that. So that by this forced me to become crisp, and the interviewer in 90 seconds learned what education I have, what experience that I bring, and what are my other social aspects which will make me a good team player. My fourth tip is on online search. When you search for jobs online, search for jobs either from companies, search for jobs from that specific industry, make a list of who are the consultants that are posting jobs on behalf of other companies. Through this, you will also find networking groups. Do a Google search on, suppose if you are from technology or pharma or banking, do a Google search on which are the top companies, fastest growing companies in Canada in that segment. Go to, depending on where you are staying, if you are in New York or Brampton or Toronto or whichever city, do a Google search on which companies are hiring, who are the top HR consultants, which are the top networking events. Use your online search to find those offline networking avenues where you can go, and by putting that hard work on your resume, your cover letter, and your interview questions, even when you are at that networking session, you are telling your story in a way that will resonate with people, similar to what Chris touched upon, what Vivian touched upon, and what Karan touched upon. So I hope I'm in time, and this is Jacob.
Thank you, Ahmed. And you can see as an HR and a recruitment professional, I'm nodding a lot as you're talking. So I hope the candidates are getting, some great insights that actually Ahmed's points are really spot on. Make sure that you do your homework before you come to the interview. Actually, 70% of the interview questions you can really already prepare before you come to the interview. So, great discussion and a great point. I'm sure Sonia has a lot of questions from the audience. At this point, I would, give back to Sonia to ask some questions to our panel.
Oh, well, I'd like to thank everyone for a marvelous panel event. It was very detailed, and I could really see how our viewers will be able to relate to everything that you have to say, with the whole move to Canada, not being familiar with certain terms, and just learning how to apply, and especially with Amit, like you went into a lot of detail talking about how long it could really take. I mean, you would think that 14 months just to figure out how to do interviews and how to speak in an interview. That's typically how long it could possibly take, and that's something that everybody needs to realize, because everyone thinks that, oh my gosh, I need to get a job right now, I just landed, and that desperation can show when you're going into your interviews. So thank you, everyone, and everyone who's been watching, thank you for your patience, because now we are ready to take your questions. So I'll leave the screen on for everybody to see how you can contact RBC, and if you want to look at new roles, and there's a newcomer center that you can also go and visit, and we've got a great RBC team over there as well, just as nice as these people. So Sheila and her team would be more than happy to welcome you there if you ever attend there. So let's start. Hafsa has a question. It's a great starting question. They're saying, she asks, what is more important when you're applying to jobs or when you're going into an interview, soft skills or hard skills? Or, I mean, if they're both important, for a newcomer, could you explain the importance of soft skills? That anybody can take that question, I guess.
I would say, if I had to pick one, I would pick soft skills. The amount of transferable, the most transferable skills that one has are the softer side of things. Even when you do a graduate degree, typically the things that you focus on are your softer skills. Whether that's communication, your presence, your storytelling. That's not going to change. You're always going to require those skills no matter which role you end up taking on. So I would say that's, having a story nailed down is more important on the softer side.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that we are in a evolving industry. We're in an evolving world. We've already made a declaration we're becoming a digitally enabled bank. So while I totally agree with Karen, I think you want to be able to start looking at some of those hard skills, some of those capabilities now that RBC, for example, is hiring lots of jobs for, right? So those um, digital roles, and they don't have to be programmers. So you could have a digital marketing experience, for example. You can look at those hard skills. They're going to become far more in demand, and so therefore I would recommend that start looking at those skills. If you can enhance those and make sure you have some accreditation, some experience around them, training, all of that will come in well on a resume nowadays.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, so I think that's what she meant, as in because a lot of people have all the technical skills that a resume job ad might be asking for, but they might lack on the soft skills. So I guess it's just as important to have both, I would say.
The balance.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Namrata has a question. She wants to know, she doesn't have any work experience, but she's a recent MBA grad and in finance and marketing, and she wants to start working in the banking sector. And she wants to know, with an MBA, should she be starting off at an entry-level position?
So we have a great program called the GLP program, and it's hard to
Awesome.
get into. But I don't know, Ahmed or Vivian, I don't know if you have any insight into how to get access to the graduate leadership program
So
for
I can
MBAs
answer,
specifically.
yeah. So the GLP, we do recruit from the top to the top. We go to all the MBA schools, and I think every year we are in different in PNCB, personal commercial banking, and also in other corporate functions. We have a similar rotational program. So do check our website. Go to jobs@rbc.com, and every year we post the job postings early. Actually, at start of September, you should start. Make sure you have job alerts. Yeah, we do recruit the top MBA students, and we provide them great rotational development experience within RBC. Yeah.
Thank you, Vivian. Raj has a question, and I guess that's could be targeted towards either of you. But I know that Amit talked about, having a strategic speech or tailoring your resume, what you need to do. So he wants to know: is it really important to tailor your resume for each role that you apply to, or could you just have a general resume and banking resume that you can send out?
Raj, here is my thoughts. When you're applying for a role, and if it's the same role that you're applying for, then you don't have to tweak your resume, because you are probably applying for a commercial account manager, or you're probably applying for a banking advisor. If that's the kind of role that you're applying for, you don't have to change your resume each time. But if you're applying for a different role which needs different set of skill sets or background or experience, then you want to highlight those in your past work experience or your education for the benefit of the interviewer.
Thank you. Okay, so it has a two-part question. The first part, I guess, would be for Vivian. He wants to know, how often do you end up hiring through ACCES?
Oh, actually, ACCES has been our long-term partner for the last, at least 10 years. So we understand for newcomers, it's really hard when you don't have a lot of connections and when you just first come to Canada. But we also understand there's a huge talent pool within the newcomer communities. A lot of people come in, like Chris, Karen, and Emma themselves. They come with a vast experience in their home country, and it'll be such a untapped talent if we don't really look into. So recently, what we have done, we have been partnering with employment agencies like ACCES and do a lot of job or interview, or not speed interview or speed mentoring events. What we do is, instead of asking people just to submit their resumes online, we invite some through our agency. We invite our job seekers to RBC and meet with our hiring managers and our recruiters directly, get some feedback, get some mentoring tips, but also get the opportunity just to do that, to have that face-to-face opportunity. In one of our most recent events, we actually invited 40 newcomer job seekers to meet with our hiring captains for personal and commercial banking roles. So on that day, we made 20 offers on that day. So basically, you come for the interview, you've done your assessment prior to the interview. On that day, we made 20 offers, 20 people got jobs. So that's one of the example of success story I'd like to share. So a short answer is we do hire a lot from ACCES Employment.
Thank you, Vivian, and I hope that makes a lot of people more confident in our services and the RBC recruitment process as well. The second part to the question is, I guess, for the men, because everyone looks nice and sharp. He wants to know what is the dress code for RBC, and does all men have to be clean shaven? Because that's what he sees right now.
I don't think there's a standard. We certainly don't discriminate. There are employees who have full beards and
Okay.
facial hair. So I think we are a professional organization, right? So if you're our client facing, you are required to look the part. We don't come to work in shorts and t-shirts. I think most of us have a professional attitude, which means a suit, but the official dress code has been officially declared business casual. Exactly. So we're no longer required suits and ties. But we do advise our employees dress for the occasion. So if you have a meeting with your executives, for example, and you're presenting something to a board of executives, you're going to find our executives have not slacked off of wearing suits and formal dresses and business attire. So you dress for the part, you dress for the role, you dress for the day. We do still carry that decorum throughout. But there are jeans days, and you're going to find that our IT partners are probably wearing jeans more often than they are suits, and that's just a standard that you'll find when you get in.
So Sonia, Amit here. I'll share something that I learned very early on in my career when I joined the bank. And this was really well put to me. So in a bank, if you are doing a role where you are meeting with clients, similar to what is just said now, people come to a bank because they trust the banker. So that's why we need to look professional, because then we can give that trust to our clients so that they can either borrow money from us or keep their wealth with us. So we need to, I think the underlying thing over here is the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you come across, clients trust you. And that's really, really very important for us over here. And that's why when you're a client facing role, do everything that will give the impression to the client that here is a banker that I trust, whether it's for a mortgage, whether it's an account, whether it's deposits, whatever it is. If you're in a non-client facing role, then just be professional. It doesn't mean that you be clean shaven. Whatever is being professional, it is, and that's my simple take on it.
Thank you, Emmett. Thank you for adding that. My next question is to any of you three, I guess. So when you had to, this is from Sivan, and he wants to know when you did make the transition from, moving to Canada and getting into the workplace, what were the challenges that you faced in the workplace when you first started off?
I can start. When I first came to the workplace, I think constantly I felt like I couldn't join the conversation. I got a job. I had a skill I need. When my colleagues go out, I don't understand. I understand English, what they're talking about, but I don't really understand what they're talking about. For example, they were talking about a song they loved when they were teenagers, or TV shows or anything. And a lesson I learned is be comfortable with that, because I didn't grow up here and I don't have to fit into that box. right? I have my own culture background. I'm proud. My own culture background. And I know the songs or the TV shows I grew up with, and do not feel stressed out about that. But at the same time, try to learn new things, new about the other culture, new about Canada, and try to just. Try to achieve that balance. That is the challenge I face, and how I have come to terms with it.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to share their experience?
In Canada being an inclusive environment and the diversity that we have, one of my biggest recommendations is just learning how to not learning, because it's a human skill. It's adapting faster. It's integrating into your society. I coach my son's hockey team. I can't say that I skate very well, but that's what I mean. It's not becoming Canadian. It's just sharing your culture and understanding the cultures of others. There is no true Canadian culture. We are a officially diverse and integrative and inclusive environment, and I use that. Share your culture, but at the same time, I think Amit said it earlier. It's don't feel comfortable going in and living in the area that you know Caribbean people, Jamaican people live. There are very few Jamaican people where I live, but it's going there and sharing your culture and learning, meeting with your neighbors. I enjoy walking around my neighborhood and meeting my neighbors, and it's important. So adapting to life in Canada, like Vivian said earlier on, 6 months of winter. I enjoy winter sports, so I do them because it makes the 6 months of winter far more tolerable. The 6 months of summer, I'm used to that weather. So you know, getting out there and being a part of Canadian culture and enjoying all that it has to offer will make your transition into Canadian living so much easier. And so that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Christopher. Thanks for reminding us of the 6 months of winter. Um, Pratush has a question, and I guess I'm just filtering out the questions that are being asked a lot. So he wants to know, is it important to get a Canadian certification to be able to work in a bank, or their past experience would be good enough for applying to RBC?
I just want to help everybody who is asking this question. When I applied, I only had my education from India. I did not take anything in Canada. I did not even do the CSC because what I really became better at telling the interviewer was how whatever that I have learned from my home country, the work experience or the education, how will that help me perform well in your team or perform well in that specific role. It's only much later that I actually got some education from North America, and I took a lot of courses after I joined the organization because internally we have a good repository. But to answer your question, how you convince the interviewer as to why your experience, your education will help you do that role better and be successful in that role is more important than just talking about I have a certificate, I have an accreditation.
Thank you. So the next question, to getting to the interview answers that question. Now, before you get into the interview stage, just resume. So a lot of people are saying, I've applied to RBC, I haven't heard back. Is it because they're looking for Canadian experience, or what's the case? So maybe we could just go over generally what is it that RBC looks for and what they need to do to pass the ATS system, so that everybody gets a better understanding again as well.
So I just want to make it clear that because RBC is the #1 brand in Canada, from recruitment perspective, every job we have around between 500 to 1,000 applications. So do not make it so personal. Oh, it's about me. They are not hiring me because I'm a newcomer. I would definitely echo all our panels have been focusing on build your network. try to learn from your community, and you never know who's going to refer you to what job. And the reality is, in the job market, not only in RBC, more than 60% of jobs that are obtained through networking. So never be patient, be persistent. Do not be discouraged when you don't have anybody contact you. I remember when I just came to Canada, I think I applied more than 200 jobs. I never heard back from anybody. But it's a matter of believing in yourself and have that positive attitude. That's the most important, and it's going to make you stand out eventually.
Thank you. And again, tailoring your resume to each job that you're applying to. Using one general resume might not even pass the ATS system at all. So each job that you apply to, it's like a full-time job looking for another job, and tailoring your resume for each job that you're applying to. So there is a lot of time to be invested. Just clicking a button and sending off your resume to 200 different places will probably you're losing your chance in actually hearing back from the company that you're applying to. I'd like to thank the panelists again. Thank you very much for joining us. And everyone else watching, thank you again for joining us. So we have gone a little bit over our time, but I just wanted to make sure that we can get some questions out of the way. Before we move forward, does anybody on the panel want to say anything?
I'll just say I read one of the questions, which was probably somebody didn't get my name. So my name is Amit Brahme, because I think somebody did want to get in touch in LinkedIn. So I just want to say that. And again, thank you, everybody. I think I really learned that Chris, Karan, and I, and even Vivian, we share a very similar story. And thanks again, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for hosting this panel, and Vivian for moderating. Would love to, if there's any questions that folks have that we haven't addressed, we'd love to help take those offline and get back to you.
Perfect.
And good luck.
Thank you, everyone. There's always great feedback from our panelists for our clients as well. But just so everyone knows that there will be a recording at the end of the webinar that will be sent out to everybody, along with all the information that was included in the webinar, including Amit's name as well. And when you do send a LinkedIn request or a message to any of our panelists, please mention that you watched the webinar so that they can reference back to where you found them from.
Already got one.
Oh, awesome. All right. So again, thank you for your participation, everybody. I just wanted to say, if you do want to get in touch with RBC, you can access rbc.com/access, or you can call 866-811-0596 as well. If you want to stay in touch with us, we are very active on our social media. You can get in touch with us through Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram now. And again, you've already started to send invites to our panelists as well. So I'd like to thank everyone again. We hope to see you guys back again. And Vivian, will probably be seeing you sooner or rather than later. And I wish you all a wonderful day. And for viewers, I wish you all best of luck and with your job search in Canada. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.